Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 12. June 29th, 1926. Each created thing contains an image of the divine qualities, and the divine will glorifies these qualities in each created thing. After I had gone through most bitter days of privations, when my beloved Jesus came to cheer me, he spent several hours with me. He made himself seen of a very young age, of a rare, enrapturing beauty. He sat on my bed, near me, and told me, "My daughter, I know that you cannot be without me, because I am more than your very life for you. So if I did not come, you would lack the substance of life. Besides, we have so many things to do together in the kingdom of the Supreme Will. Therefore, when you see that I do not come quickly, do not oppress yourself so much. Be sure that I shall come, because my coming is necessary for you and for me, because I must see the things of my kingdom, and while directing it, I must enjoy it. How can you have the slightest doubt that in a kingdom so longed for by me, the King of Triumph might be missing? Therefore come into my arms, that your Jesus may strengthen you." And while saying this, he took me in his arms. He clasped me tightly to his breast, and rocking me, he told me, "Sleep, sleep on my breast, my little newborn of my will." In the arms of Jesus, I was so very little, and did not feel like sleeping. I wanted to enjoy Jesus. I wanted to tell him so many things, now that I had the good of his prolonged presence with me. But Jesus continued to rock me, and I, without wanting to, fell into a sweet, sweet sleep. But while sleeping, I could hear the beating of the heart of Jesus speaking. It was saying, "My will." And then another heartbeat as though answering, "Love do I want to infuse in the little daughter of my will." In the heartbeat, "My will," a large circle of light was formed, and in the heartbeat, "Love," another circle, smaller, in such a way that the large one would enclose the small one. While I was sleeping, Jesus would take these circles formed by his heartbeat and would seal them in my whole person. I felt I was being all fortified and strengthened in the arms of Jesus. How happy I felt! But clasping me more tightly to his breast, Jesus woke me up and told me, "My little daughter, let us make our round throughout the whole creation, in which the Supreme Will contains its life, does its distinct act in each created thing, and triumphant of itself, magnifies and glorifies all of its supreme qualities in a perfect way. If you look at the sky, your eye cannot see its boundaries. Wherever it looks, there is sky, nor can you tell where it ends or where it begins. This is the image of our Supreme Being, that has no beginning and no end. And in the azure sky, our will praises and glorifies our eternal being that has no beginning and no end. This sky, studded with stars, is the image of our being. Just as the sky is one, so is the divinity one single act. But in the multiplicity of the stars, our works ad extra that descend from this single act, and the effects and the works of this single act, are innumerable. And in the stars, our will magnifies and glorifies the effects and the multiplicity of our works, that include the angels, man, and all created things. See how beautiful it is to live in my will, in the unity of this supreme light, and to be aware of the meaning of all created things, and to praise, magnify, glorify the Supreme Creator with His very will in all of our images that each created thing contains. But move on to look at the sun. Under the vault of the heavens, one can see a limited circumference of light that contains light and heat, and descending down below invests all the earth. This is the image of the light and love of the Supreme Maker, who loves everyone and does good to all. From the height of His Majesty, He descends down below, deep into the hearts, even into hell. But He does it quietly, without clamor, wherever He is. Oh, how our will glorifies and magnifies our eternal light, our inextinguishable love, and our all-seeingness. Our will murmurs in the sea, and in the immensity of the waters that hide innumerable fishes of every species and color, it glorifies our immensity that envelops everything and holds all things as though in the palm of its hand. Our will glorifies the image of our immutability in the firmness of the mountains, the image of our justice in the roaring of the thunder and in the bolt of lightning, the image of our joy in the little bird that sings, trills, and warbles, the image of our moaning love in the turtle dove that moans, the image of the continuous call that we make to man in the lamb that bleats, saying in each bleating, "Me, me, come to me, come to me." And our will glorifies us in the continuous call we make to the creature. All created things have a symbol of ours, an image of ours, and our will has the commitment to magnify us and glorify us in all our works, because since the work of creation is work of the Supreme Fiat, it was befitting for it to preserve our glory, whole and permanent, in all created things. Now our Supreme Will wants to give this commitment as inheritance to the one who must live in the unity of its light, because it would not be befitting to live in its light and not identify with the acts of the Supreme Fiat. Therefore, my little daughter, all created things, as well as my will, await you in each created thing, to repeat its very acts, to glorify and magnify your Creator with the very divine will. Now, who can say all the images of our Creator that all creation encloses? If I wanted to say everything, I would never end. So in order not to be too long, I had to say just a few things, and I did it to obey, and for fear of displeasing Jesus. July 1st, 1926. There is no sanctity without the will of God. The coming of Jesus upon earth served to form the ways and the stairs to reach the kingdom of His will. I was doing my usual acts in the Supreme Volition, and I thought to myself, how is it possible that among the many saints of the Old Testament, who have so distinguished themselves with the power of miracles, like a Moses and Elijah and the many prophets, and among so many saints after the coming of our Lord, who have rendered themselves so marvelous because of their virtues and miracles, none of these has possessed the kingdom of the divine will and has lived in the unity of its light? It seems incredible. Now, while I was thinking of this, My sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and clasping me to himself, told me, "My daughter, yet it is really true that until now no one has possessed the kingdom of my will or enjoyed all the fullness of the unity of the light it contains. Had it been so, since it is the thing that interests me the most, that glorifies me the most, and that, no less, shall place all the divine rights in safety, and shall complete the work of creation and redemption, and not only this, but shall bring to the creature the greatest good that can exist in heaven and on earth, I would have acted in such a way as to make it known. Just as I have made known the many virtues and wonders of my saints, I would have made known the one who had possessed the kingdom of my will, that I hold so dear, so as to transmit it to others, by imitating the one who had possessed it. Now, the saints of the Old Testament found themselves in the same condition as Adam. A divine repairer was missing, who, while rejoining the human will and the divine, was to pay the debt of guilty man in a divine way. However, both the ancient saints and the modern ones have taken of my will as much as they have known. The very miracles they performed were particles of the power of my will communicated to them. So all my saints have lived, some in the shadow of my will, some in the reflections of its light, some submitted to its power, some to the order of its commands, because there is no sanctity without my will. But they have possessed of it the little they have known, no more, because only when a good is known does one then long for it and arrives at possessing it. No one can possess a good, a property, without knowing it. And suppose one did possess it without knowing it. That good is as though dead for him, because the life of knowledge is missing. Now, since my will is the greatest thing, that encompasses everything, and all things from the greatest to the smallest remain dissolved before it, so many things should be known about my will as to surpass what is known about creation, about redemption, about all virtues and all sciences. My will was to be a book for each step, for each act, a book for each created thing. The whole earth was to be filled with volumes of knowledges regarding the kingdom of my will, such as to surpass the number of created things. Now, where are these books? There is no book. Only a few sayings are known about it, while it should be at the origin of each knowledge of anything. Being the life of each thing, it should be, on everything, like the image of the king impressed on the currency that circulates in a kingdom, like the light of the sun that shines over each plant to give it life, like water that quenches the thirst of burning lips, like food that satiates the hungry man after a long fast. Everything should be filled with the knowledge regarding my will. And if it is not so, it is a sign that the kingdom of my will is not known, and therefore not possessed. Would you perhaps be able to tell me which saint said that he possessed this kingdom and the unity of the light of the supreme volition? Certainly not. I myself spoke little about it. Had I wanted to speak extensively about the kingdom of my will, and about wanting to form it in man, just as innocent Adam possessed it, since this is the highest point, the most proximal to God, and the closest to the divine likeness, and since the fall of Adam was still fresh, they would all have become discouraged, and turning their backs to me would have said, "If innocent Adam could not manage, nor had the constancy to live in the sanctity of this kingdom, so much so as to cause his own fall, and that of all generations, into miseries, into passions, and irreparable evils, how can we, guilty ones, live in a kingdom so holy? Beautiful, yes, but we can say that it is not for us. Not only this, but since my will is the highest point, the ways, the means of transportation, the stairs, the decent clothes, the appropriate foods were needed in order to be able to dwell in this kingdom. So my coming upon earth served to form all this. Each one of my sayings, works, pains, prayers, examples, instituted sacraments, were ways that I formed, means of transportation, to let them arrive more quickly, stairs to let them ascend. It can be said that I gave them the clothes of my humanity, reddened with my blood, to let them be clothed decently in this kingdom of my will, so holy that in creation the uncreated wisdom established to give to man as inheritance. So even though I spoke little about this, because when I speak at time and circumstance, as the necessity and the utility of the good that my word contains must be enclosed in it. Instead of speaking, I did the deeds, intending to speak to you about the kingdom of my will. Now, how could they possess it if they did not have full knowledge of it? On the other hand, you must know that all the manifestations I have made to you about it, its prodigies, its goods, what the soul must do to be able to settle in this kingdom, my very expressed will for man to return into my kingdom, and how I have done everything, creation, redemption, so that he might come to possess my kingdom that he had lost, are bonds of transmission, are doors to let him enter, are donations that I make, are laws, instructions on how to live in it, intelligence to make them comprehend and appreciate the good they possess. If all this was missing, how could they possess this kingdom of my will? It would be as if someone wanted to go live in another kingdom without a passport, without knowing either its laws or its customs or its dialect. For one, his entrance would be impossible, and if he did enter as an intruder, he would be so ill at ease that he himself would rather go out of a kingdom he knows nothing about. Now, my daughter, does it not seem easier to you, more encouraging, more within the reach of the human nature, that after they have known the kingdom of redemption, in which the blind, the lame, and the sick can be healed, because the blind cannot enter the kingdom of my will, for in it all are straight and glowing with health, finding all possible means in the kingdom of redemption, and the very passport of my passion and death, in order to pass into the kingdom of my will, animated at the sight of such a great good, they shall decide to take possession of it. Therefore, be attentive and do not want to constrain or reduce the goods that are in the kingdom of my will. And you do this when you do not manifest everything of what I make known to you. Because knowledge is the bearer of the gift. And if now I abound in the knowledges about it, it is gifts that I make. And in these gifts, I establish the more or the less to be placed in the kingdom of my will, for the good of those who are to possess it. July 2nd, 1926. The great difference between the sanctity of virtues and that of living in the unity of the light of the divine will. As I was in my usual state, my sweet Jesus showed divine justice in the act of unloading itself over the earth, commanding the elements to rage against creatures. I trembled in seeing that somewhere there were waters inundating towns almost to bury them. Somewhere the wind transported and eradicated plants, trees, and houses with a mighty power, to the point of making a heap of them, leaving various regions in the most squalid misery. Somewhere else there were earthquakes, crawling with considerable damage. But who can say all the evils that are about to swoop down on earth? In addition to this, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen in my interior as suffering in a harrowing way because of the many offenses that creatures were giving him, especially because of the many hypocrisies. It seemed that under the apparent good, they had poison, swords, spears, and nails hidden to wound him in every way. Then, as if Jesus wanted me together with him to suffer, he told me, "My daughter, the scale of my justice is full and is overflowing upon creatures. As daughter of my will, do you want me to place you in the reflections of my justice, that you may share in its blows? Indeed, it is about to make a heap of the earth. And while satisfying justice, with your suffering you shall spare your brothers. The one who lives in the high kingdom of the supreme will must defend and help those who are down below." Now, while he was saying this, I felt as if divine justice was pouring its reflections over me, and as Jesus identified me with himself, I suffered his blows, his wounds, and his pains together with him. They were so many that I myself did not know whether I would be left alive or dead. But to my highest sorrow, withdrawing, my Jesus mitigated my pains, and I remained once again crossing my hard and long exile. But always Fiat, Fiat. I would rather have passed over all this, but obedience imposed itself, and to my greatest reluctance, I had to make a little mention of it. Who can say how I was left? And my sweet Jesus, to cheer me, resumed his speaking about his most holy will. "My daughter, come with me in the midst of creation. Heaven and earth await you. They want the one who, animated by that same will that animates them and gives them life, would make the whole creation resound with that most sweet echo of the eternal love of their Maker. They want your voice, that flowing in each created thing would animate their mute language with that perennial glory and adoration to their Creator. And since all things are bound to one another, and one is the strength of the other, because one is the supreme will that vivifies them and preserves them, the one who possesses it is bound to them with the same strength and with the same union. So if you are not present in the midst of creation, because of your absence, they would feel the universal strength and the bond of inseparability lacking to them. Therefore come into our dominions, for everyone longs for you. And at the same time, I shall make you comprehend more things about the great distance that exists between the sanctity of the one who possesses the unity of the light of the kingdom of my will, and the sanctity of submission, of resignation, and of virtues. Now, while he was saying this, I found myself outside of myself, and I tried to make my I love you, my adoration, resound over all created things. And Jesus, all goodness, added, "My daughter, look at the heavens, the stars, the sun, the moon, the plants, the flowers, the sea. Look at everything. Each created thing has its distinct nature, its own color, its littleness, and its height. Each of them has its distinct office, and one cannot do what the other does, nor produce the same effects. So each created thing is a symbol of the sanctity of virtues, of submission and resignation to my will. According to the virtues they have practiced, souls have drawn a distinct color within themselves. Therefore, it can be said that one is red flower, another purple, another white. One is plant, one is tree, another is star. And according to how they have submitted to the reflections of the supreme will, so have they developed in fecundity, in height, in beauty. But one is their shade, because my will, like solar ray, gave them the color of the seed that they themselves had placed in their souls. On the other hand, the sanctity of the one who lives in the unity of the light of my will is a birth from that single act of her Creator that is one in the creative hands, and yet the rays of his will, coming out of God, invade everything and produce works and effects so innumerable that man cannot arrive at counting them all. So since this sanctity is a birth from that single act, it shall be the supreme will's care and jealousy for it to enclose all colors, all the different beauties, and all possible and imaginable goods within itself. And so more than blazing sun, it shall enclose and eclipse within itself all of creation with its different beauties. One shall see all the goods of redemption enclosed in it, as well as all sanctities. And I, showing off my love more than ever, shall place the seal of my very sanctity within the one who has possessed the kingdom of my will. Do you know how it shall be for your Creator with regard to this sanctity of living in my will? It shall happen as to a king who has no offspring. This king never enjoys the affection of a child of his own, nor does he feel like lavishing all his paternal caresses and his affectionate kisses, because in no one does he see his own progeny, his own features, someone to whom to entrust the destiny of his kingdom. Poor one, he lives always with a nail in his heart. He lives always surrounded by servants by people who do not resemble him. And if they remain around him, it is not out of pure love, but out of self-interest, to gain riches and glory, and maybe even to betray him. Now, suppose that a son comes to the light for him after a long time. What is not the feast of this king? How he kisses him, caresses him. He cannot remove his gaze from his son, in whom he recognizes his own image. Just newly born, he gives him his kingdom and all of his goods as inheritance. And his complete joy and feast is that his kingdom shall no longer belong to some strangers, to his servants, but to his dear son. So it can be said that what belongs to the Father belongs to the Son, and what belongs to the Son belongs to the Father. Now the one who shall possess the kingdom of my will shall be for us like a child born after about 6,000 years. What joy, what feast shall not be ours in seeing our image in him, intact, beautiful, just as we delivered it from our paternal womb. All the caresses, the kisses, the gifts shall be for this child. More so since, having given in creation the kingdom of our will to man as his special inheritance, and since this kingdom of ours has been in the hands of strangers, of servants, of traitors for so long a time, in seeing this Son who shall possess it as a son, and shall give us the glory of the kingdom of our will, our inheritance shall be placed in safety on the part of this Son. Is it not right that we give him everything, even our very selves, and that he enclose everything in everyone? While Jesus was saying this, I became concerned, and I said to him, "How can all this be possible, my love?" And Jesus added, "My daughter, do not be surprised. By possessing the kingdom of the supreme will, the soul shall possess a divine, infinite, eternal will that encloses all goods. And the one who possesses everything can give us everything. What shall be our contentment, our happiness, and his, in seeing the littleness of the creature in this kingdom of ours, taking from us continuously as the owner, as our true child? And since what he takes from us is divine, he takes the divine, and the divine he gives to us. He takes the infinite, and the infinite he gives to us. He takes immense things from us, and immense things he gives to us. He takes light from us, and light he brings to us. He shall do nothing but take and give to us. We shall place all our things at his disposal, so that in the kingdom of our will, given to him by us, nothing extraneous to us may enter any more, but only our own things, and we may receive the fruits, the glory, the love, the honor of the kingdom of our will. Therefore, be attentive, and let your flight in our volition be continuous. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 19, Part 12. Fiat.